Good morning to you, Rick. Thank you so much for joining us. Rick, it takes a lot to run a business. I know you have taken some time out to speak to us. You're at a very interesting and exciting stage of the development of the brand. So thank you for joining us this morning. Good pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Rick, I think for a lot of people who might not know, or especially this side of the water, it would be really good to start off with you telling us a little bit about who Rick Hewitt is. I mean, we don't have to go to kindergarten quite yet, but just give us a flavor of who you are.
Yeah, grew up and have lived on the West Coast of the U.S. my whole life. Currently up in Seattle, which is where I went to college. Big place for beverage brands, obviously with Starbucks probably being the most famous of them. Got great, soft mountain water here. So big craft beer culture, big wine culture. Everybody likes their craft artisanal spirits in the Northwest. And
I didn't even know that. So
yeah, absolutely. Beer, coffees, the whole bit. Everybody's into craft spirits and craft wines and everything. So yeah, it's a beverage geeky kind of area for sure. And we play our small little part in that big fabric of lots of different types of beverage makers.
Oh, amazing. I had no idea. Perfect place to locate then.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Didn't really realize it when I came up here to go to school, but it was fun being around when all the craft beers were coming out with the Red Hooks and the Woodmeres and the Sierra Nevadas and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously we are here to talk about you running Unicorn Distillery. It's it's still an emerging player, a very remarkable player in the spirits industry. But you're by no means a rookie in this industry at all, are you? You've been here before.
A little bit, yeah. I had a small craft brewery for a little while and was kind of chasing that trend as it was peaking. And then, silly enough, I did the same thing with ciders, and I chased that trend as well. And then seltzers kind of put a pretty quick end to the growth in ciders, at least here in the U.S. And so then I went to tech, and that was really kind of where I kind of re-leveraged my prior life in education with my master's of accounting and CPA background, and kind of fell back on that and went into tech and did pretty well with that. And it's really when I discovered the tea flower in 2018 that the itch to get back to beverage innovation really starts to fester, and the rabbit hole opens up after that.
Totally. And we're absolutely going to go into that, because I don't think I've ever discovered this ingredient before. So I'm eager to delve into what makes that so special. But I must say, we've done this podcast with quite a few amazing different owners, founders of distilleries, and we're starting to see a little bit of a trend with most people, perhaps it's a coincidence, they come from finance, they come from tech. Can you help a girl out? Why would there be such a correlation between people entering the distilling world and people in tech? Is there one? Am I wrong?
I know it's an industry with quite a bit of regulation, and if you're intimidated by that, that structure and that rigor of the structure, which finance people come from a very rigorous, structured kind of culture in terms of we think in the world of spreadsheets and things of that nature. So
yeah,
a heavily regulated industry isn't as intimidating to me, because I'm naturally a pretty organized, pretty structured, process-driven operator. And I think if you come from those backgrounds, you'll be pretty successful in beverage, because it's a game of pennies and it's a game of small details, and it requires patience and process over a long period of time.
That's a really interesting take on that. People come at access, and I think it speaks to how accessible this world is. You can come at it from so many different directions, and you find yourself transferring those skills that you've earned back into a world of distilling, which is very hopeful for the industry indeed. So you went to tech, and I hear this is maybe the budding of the unicorn name, because actually you got stuck in quite high growth type businesses, right? What we call the unicorns. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was fortunate enough to join a company that was on the cusp of becoming a unicorn, $1 billion company. I think they were worth something around $700 million when I joined them. So by no means was I there for the early part of their ride. I think they were a 10 or 11-year-old company even by the time I joined them. But I was one of their first 400 employees and was lucky enough to be part of their massive growth to thousands of employees and being on the publicly traded stock market and ringing the bell. And, I got to work the year and a half kind of before that, and then the year and a half after that. So that was a really fun chapter in that company's time. And working with hundreds, a couple hundred people all working towards, hey, we're going to go public next year. Let's work really hard to get there. And that's the unicorn tech culture that sometimes get a bad rap, but is pushing innovation and pushing us forward in so many ways as well. And so I wanted to build a brand that encourages and represents that community.
And you totally, you said it before in terms of like, you're into the detail when you're describing yourself. We talk about that a lot when we're at Signet. We're obsessive about the details and unapologetically so. But you're completely right when it comes to creating a business that's that values at $1 billion. There is some willpower, there's some change-making drive, there's some resilience that's needed to lead some of those types of companies. Do you think that those sort of values underpin your brand at Unicorn?
Yeah, well said. Absolutely. Yeah, I think the values are what it ultimately, I think brands come down to, right? Mission, vision, values, is kind of the catchphrase for that. But values are really important when you're looking over a long period of time. What's going to keep you motivated, or what's going to keep you on course, or what's going to keep going when things are low. You ultimately have to come back to those values, and the mission of what you're trying to accomplish. And if you still believe in those, then the highs and the lows aren't as high and aren't as low.
Yeah, and I think as you say, like, you've got highs and lows, and there's some critical decisions making that you have to make along the way. So having those, maybe not strict, but those guiding values to keep you moving forward, making sure you're not drifting away from that mission is, I think, fundamental. I know,
Absolutely.
of course, you are a husband-wife business, so we'll give a little shout out to Alaina. How do you make, I mean, of course, a lot of distilleries and businesses in the drinks world are family-led. How do you make that life partnership work in running a business?
Yeah, we look at it as we're a high-performance team, not a family business. And it is a next man up kind of the mentality in terms of, we want you, we want everybody to be at their best when, they come to work for the mission, the values, the vision. Obviously, if they can't, then we want to support them, in getting them back to being able to participate at their best. But the mantra of, like, we want, deep subject matter experts who care about those details in their different, because like you said, it does take a lot of skill sets from a lot of different backgrounds. And, the folks and the teams that are, in our warehouses working on our production and actually making the packages have a different skill set than the sales teams and the marketing, development, that team.
Totally.
So it really does take everybody moving together. And so I think we just get back to what we were talking about earlier about the mission, the vision. I mean, it's not about the family dynamic. It's about the team getting the best performance so that we can all win together, because this is, we don't do it, nobody else is going to, kind of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've just described a whole bunch of business. So how did this all start? I'm sure this started with a concept, an idea, potentially an experience, maybe? How did Unicorn begin?
Yeah, so Alaina and I, on our first trip back when we're still dating, we go up to Canada, and there's a distillery in Victoria. And when you check into the Empress Hotel, you get a welcome drink, and it's gin poured on ice. It's cool purple color. They pour the tonic. It, of course, turns pink, and it's garnished with the grapefruit. And you're sitting out in front of the Empress, and you're looking at the sunset. It couldn't match the colors of their sunset better. I mean, it is blue, purple, purple, pink, and orange sunset. So it's a beautiful cocktail experience, and we enjoy it. But we also don't drink gin. So we're like, this is fun, but this would be even cooler if this was in a vodka soda, right? So we had a great trip. It was, I mean, if you haven't been, you should go to Victoria in the summer. It is a beautiful place.
I know, I've added it. So it's already bookmarked.
Yeah, it's a good spot for sure. In the summer, come down to Seattle real quick on the little seaplane. Takes you like 40 minutes. But anyway, great trip. Come back to the States, and the beverage geek in me is a little bit curious about this tea flower, and I want to make a vodka for Alaina and I to have at home, just to keep the trip alive and just to play around with and to have fun.
Okay, right, okay.
The Pandora's box just opens up after this, because now I'm I'm online trying to figure it out. I find out it's FDA illegal in the US, but for some reason, Empress is here and just blowing up and going nuts. So it's like, well, how is that being reconciled? Okay, let's set that aside. Let's get some of the tea flower, since I can just buy it on Amazon, even though it's FDA illegal. I can just have it shipped to my house next day. So, and now I have this FDA illegal ingredient, and I have access to a, Bevmo, Total Wine, et cetera, name your liquor store.
I'm sensing the willpower coming through here.
Yeah, so I'm playing around in the kitchen, and I've got the corn vodka and the grain vodka and the potato vodka and the grape vodka, and they're all different colors of purple. And I'm trying to figure out, well, why are they all different? Is it because the grain that they're being used by? And it actually becomes, I put the tea flower in water and I see that it's blue. And that's when the light bulb goes off that, oh, it's the acidity of the vodkas are all different. And therefore it's all a little bit different color purple. But it's all about the exact of that pH. And if I can make the spirits neutral like water, we've all had smart waters, right? We essentially make smart spirits in terms of we make less acidic spirits than everybody. And that's because when you put the tea flower into a neutral liquid like water, it's that real pretty blue color, not the purple color that you see on a lot of the gins. And then it can turn purple with soda water. And so now it's that same gin and tonic experience of the purple gin and the tonic making it pink. We can now pour the blue vodka and have the soda water turn it purple with the added bonus. And then you squeeze your lime in and it turns pink. And so 3 colors, 2 color changes. Wow. And when we discover that, they're like, oh, we've actually got a cooler version of what they've got going on with the gins. And if the gin brands ever decide they're going to do vodka, they're going to encounter this same problem, that they have a purple vodka that stays purple with soda water. And I have a blue vodka that turns purple with soda water. That how are they going to reconcile it? So that's when I really started to think, okay, maybe there's something more to this than me just playing around for my own sake. Maybe we actually have a brand here and a point of difference here, and we have a chance to start a trend ahead of the market instead of me chasing ciders and chasing craft beer. Why don't we go try to hype cycle butterfly pea flower? And that process is 2019, 2020, and not until the fall of 2021 and a pandemic that the FDA finally does approve the tea flower. And that's when you now see, others like myself come into the fray, because the, American innovation can get involved, and we're about bringing all new fun ways of doing the tea flower and spirits that, the rest of the world haven't figured out yet.
But of course, you've used that time to sort of get ahead, do the learning, get a point of difference, like you said. And in the meantime, you're using this quite a maybe dark and twisty time for all of us in the world. But you've managed to take advantage of that, put the sort of entrepreneurial mind on yourself, create this fantastic new, it's not a solution, it's just a new invention, if you will. But at the same time, okay, so distraction could be a word. Yeah, it doesn't sound as productive, but
fair enough.
But what's happening at the same time is the entire world is also staying at home, enjoying spirits, enjoying more premium, more the importance of spirits is investing in more and drinking better and having those experiences. So we saw a lot of RTDs start to circulate, people making that bar experience come back to their home. And essentially you were doing that for you and Alaina. But now you've come up with something that's going to really skyrocket.
Yeah, I think that's what I meant by distraction, right? It was like in 2020, it was just like, man, let's distract ourselves with playing around with this color changing tea flower for a while. What else can we make with it? I mean, we made blue sticky rice. Like, we've done all kinds of silly things with this because, we had the time.
I love that. There's probably a little parallel recipe merchandise for Unicorn to be like, and these are some recipes that you can also elaborate. But just talking about talking about butterfly pea flower, it's quite native to Asia, isn't it? As a flower. It's got really quite amazing properties as far as I was researching it, because I got intrigued. What is this thing? It's an antioxidant. It's got, it has been known to support weight loss, blood sugar control, improve your hair and skin. I mean, this sounds like a phenomenal ingredient. How much does that, and I have to put a disclaimer out there, obviously I'm not encouraging people to drink more vodka or tequila, because of these health benefits, but how much does that actually play in and your point of difference in the fact that this drink has an ingredient that's known to have such health benefits, I suppose.
It's one of those things that you're totally right. 40% of what's in the bottle is ethanol, and ethanol is, poison by any, matter of looking at it.
Absolutely.
Less than 1% of the bottle is the butterfly tea flower. So if you're going after the health benefits of the tea flower, I would recommend you drink a tea and just put it on water, squeeze some lime in, and it's fantastic. I love that people are discovering that, of course. I'm secretly trying to get Starbucks to come out with a cocktail or like a non-alcoholic just because of how great the tea flower is. And when you get back to the mission, vision, values, our mission is to accelerate the West's adoption of the tea flower because it has a lot to offer, not just the health benefits, but it's visually fun, which gives us all a little dopamine boost very naturally. And it starts conversation and laughter, things there's a lot of good that comes from that as well. That are not necessarily chemicals in the tea flower, but are still chemicals, dopamine, et cetera, right? So I think there's a lot that this tea flower just magically, it's just Mother Nature's cool, and this is one of those examples. And the West Fund Discovery being part of that is just a cool opportunity that I'm getting to be part of. But like, I do think that the tea flower is the champion here. And that's really, we want to celebrate its health benefits, of course. We are championing more its visual properties, and we don't really talk about the health benefits for the reasons, we just discussed. But I love that those are out there, and that as people do go discover more, they find out those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad we got that out the way. So if anyone was thinking that that's what we're saying, we are absolutely not.
Totally.
But it is zero sugar. It is gluten-free. So it's non-GMO, no additives, no preservatives. So you are in a situation where it is accessible, and it isn't rubbish. It isn't sort of that overly sugary pop drink that you get out there. You're looking at something that's delivering quality. Now, going back to what you just described.
How do I give the bartender just the tea flower? If they want to put it into Sprite or whatever and make it sugary, they can. But like, if I do that, then I force everybody to have it. So our limit was just the tea flower. No glitter, no nothing. It's just vodka and the tea flower, or just tequila and the tea flower. That way you, the drinker, can do whatever you want now with that. And we haven't forced it into a limited flavored profile or sugar profile or something like that. Yeah.
Which I think is exactly where I think segues us into the idea. You've described something that's very experience-led. This drink is entirely experience-led, although the component is something completely innovative and undiscovered in a lot of in the industry and a lot of different sectors. It's experience-led in design. Would that be right to say for you?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Aesthetic. We call them aesthetic-minded drinkers. The Bacardi 2024 Cocktail Trend Report talks about this, in that 1 in 3 U.S. drinkers and 1 in 5 French drinkers are considered aesthetic-minded drinkers. These are the people who are going to drink the orange goblet of Aperol Spritz, but they hate the way it tastes. But it looks great. It's pretty on the photos, right? And this is a big portion of the drinking population is they eat with their eyes, they drink with their eyes, and their palate is what's driving their behavior, and especially in certain occasions. It doesn't mean that they don't make taste-driven decisions in other occasions, but if you're at a baseball, a ballpark or whatever, you're at a show, you're at a festival, you're at a bachelorette party, you want experience. Well, then Unicorn and this will fit that occasion well, and we'll be there for that aesthetic-minded drinker who cares about the color and things like that.
That is so interesting, because I feel the same way about Aperol Spritz, except I'm the one challenging everyone else, thinking it doesn't taste medicinal. I like it. But when it rolls out in the UK, and of course we maybe have like 2 days of really good sun over here, Seattle's probably similar as far as I understand.
I was just gonna
so
say, I think
we celebrate with Aperol Spritzes, and it'd be like, no matter what it tastes, it's like it's officially summer. But anyway, that's slight digression.
Absolutely.
Does the experience-led design feel like, and the aesthetic that you're creating and marketing, does that affect the customer profile you're targeting with this brand?
Not so much, because again, I think we focus a lot on just occasion. Like, we are really just trying to add the flair and the sparkle where that makes sense, and where it doesn't, and it's agnostic of who's really there, because I mean, anybody in that moment's going to think, oh, that's fun and cool. It's not, it didn't, it's not a gender thing or a race thing or an age thing. Like, everybody thinks color change is cool. It visually pleases everybody's eyes. Like, it's not limited to any kind of one thing. Now, they may not want to drink the margarita. They may be whiskey drinkers. It doesn't mean that they still didn't enjoy seeing somebody else have that experience. And so we really just think of, where does that fit? And it doesn't fit in a dark, neighborhood Italian restaurant, right? That's not our occasion. Doesn't mean that the people who are there aren't our people. It just means that that's not when they're going to be most likely to want to try that. But then Friday night at a music festival, yeah, absolutely. That sounds great, right? And so we're really looking at what is the right occasion for us to target. Yes, it gets into a little bit of demographics, but for the most part, it's really just focusing on those occasions, the resorts, the cruise lines, the hospitality places where you want the experience and you're paying for it. So here's a tool those operators can have to help meet that expectation of why you got out of your house and went on a cruise ship. Well, you wanted something you couldn't do at all. And here's that, And
how lovely to be in a situation where you've got quite good clarity over those category entry points for your consumer. So like you said, festivals, vacations, memory making experiences, because of the theater of this impactful visual, I can totally see why you would target those entry points. And that kind of gives you that good route to market. Now, you mentioned cruises, and I know that's part of how you've rolled out Unicorn. You've gone Princess Cruises rollout.
Yeah, no kidding. They've got a really cool new boat, a new one on the way next year as well. And they've been really just lead right in. And they were, it just goes to show the need for this. A lot of these cruise lines, Princess and Cruise, were already using the tea flower on the boat. They just were doing it themselves. They were making their own cocktails with it, simple syrups, etc., because they wanted to use the ingredient. We're just providing the standardization and the speed and consistency now that they can now ensure that cocktail to cocktail, boat to boat, when they list a cocktail on their menu, they're not going to run out and they're not going to have a quality control issue around that experience. And we'd help give them that standardization.
It's the time as well. Like, having worked behind the bar before, like the amount of limes you have to juice before shift, it's a lot. This is the same principle. There's a lot of prep. There's a lot of mise en place. So I can imagine every bartender is going, oh, thank goodness. Thank goodness this has come along. Yeah, especially on a cruise ship.
We might be cutting up a few more limes, though, because we're making all the shots change color now.
Well, I mean, this is true. And apologies to all bartenders and mixologists for that change in plan. But it does lend itself to, I would imagine, more user-generated content, across social platforms. TikTok's huge. Reels and stories are still playing a part. Has that added any value to you building traction in market, through social platforms?
It really has. Yeah, we lean big into that visual point of difference. And, it's real popular to talk about how liquid to lips, in our industry, but we're liquid to eyes, kind of a experience. And so the social media really lends its well because we can really tell our story that way. We're not trying to talk about origin and ingredients and, compete necessarily from a prestige of how many awards we have, although we have awards and all of that. We just don't bring that as our point of difference. We're bringing this ingredients, cool visual, and helping educate everybody on that. Yeah.
And naturally, you're gaining this organic endorsement from customers. It's the snowball effect of social, right? And you're almost creating your own growth by just exponentially sharing this very visual, very shareable content to purely demonstrate the wow factor that is Unicorn integrating with so many different acidities. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rick.
It works with all of them. I had a bartender who was messing around with malic acid, like the apple acid the other day. It's working. So anyway, bartenders said really fun things with this. Yeah. Had a jalapeno margarita the other day that was purple. It was very strange because it was so savory and spicy and not at all sweet. But yeah, you're looking at it and it looks like it should be. So it just kind of plays with your brain.
That is funny, but because like the sensory marketing of that and challenging the status quo of having a pink jalapeno margarita sounds interesting, but
Yeah,
we'll also have to discuss what bar that was because that has to be tried.
absolutely. Yeah, when you come to Victoria, I'll have you stop by, and I know the spot.
100%. It's going to happen. It's going to
Yep.
happen.
Yep.
Obviously, Signet, we are invested. We are so passionate about the packaging and particularly how the bottle is presented. You put all this effort into creating something impactful in terms of the liquid, and then you can't let it down when it comes to the bottle. How did you approach creating this look and feel of the Unicorn bottle?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I'll give a tremendous amount of credit to my, beautiful wife, Alaina. It's her eye and aesthetic and all these cool, she comes up with a lot of the great ideas around that. I'm going to paraphrase, and she's not here to kind of speak for herself on it, but it really was the catalyst of, we knew the tea flower was fading in the clear bottle. Other brands have issues with that. We were having issues with that when we were having it in our clear bottle. And we were also noticing, as I mentioned, we're blue, purple, peak. People have a different visual association with blue than they do purple, which I didn't really realize, but people see blue and they're thinking blue curacao, they're thinking sweet, they're thinking maybe, hypnotic or something like that. And so they're thinking cheap, they're not thinking premium, and they're thinking sugar, sweet, flavored. And this is none of those things. So it's like, we didn't want them to eat with their eyes on the blue. It just wasn't to our advantage like it would be with the purple. And the fact that the tea flower faded was just like, we need to paint the bottle. We need to make it matte. And it was Alaina's idea to go with the black, because the black and the blue she thought would just really stand out.
Super
and then
impactful,
we a very masculine shaped bottle, one that would work well for flair. And then we shifted the logo down. One, because then when you put your hand on the bottle, you can still see it. Looks great on social, or for flair bartending, etc. But also you talked about the visual and how it's like for aesthetic minded drinkers. I mean, I can remember Alaina vividly saying that my old bottle was ugly and that she would just put it in the liquor cabinet and never look at it. And that we needed a bottle that people would want to keep on their liquor cabinet as something that's like aesthetically part of their house. And so then it's like, okay, well, will this work at Restoration Hardware? Will this work at Crate and Barrel, CB2, things like that? If we just put this bottle in, would the store employee go, that doesn't belong here? That was the mindset, not does this work for the bar? Does this work for the back bar? Does this work for, we weren't taking that approach. One, because it was the pandemic and we were all sitting around at home. But two, really aligned to that aesthetic minded drinker who is you go back to now our target person. Okay, well, that's still our target person. It's not an ace race gender thing. It's are they aesthetically driven? Are they visually driven in their decision making? That person's going to notice the aesthetic differences of this bottle and how it stands out. And that's the intentional part.
That is actually fascinating. Down to you got me with the shape being something that magnifies the bartender's experience to create that extra theater, because you're thinking about the experience that you're creating for the final consumer in the field, which is so interesting. So an innovative drink, you have created a very, cool and edgy bottle that can be seen. I can imagine there's a lot of education that's needed in the interim. So, you get this and then they're like, how do I know? Like, they haven't seen any of your TikToks. They've not heard from you on Forbes or the multiple different media articles that have been pushed about this incredible new drink that people are discovering. They've not seen, they were hiding underneath a rock, basically. How do we bring that education to the fore so that people know how to explore? Yeah. And that's a consumer, but as well as a bartender.
Yeah, you're hitting right on the head of like, what is the challenge to to this, right? When you're creating a new category, it takes a tremendous amount of initial education in the beginning. And we do have, some things like marketing. We talked about, the tastings and doing liquid to eyes, like at, liquor stores, things like that. We do neck tags on the bottles as well, so that, you can see some visual change, point of sale displays, and really trying to drive them to the QR code that's on the bottle or also on all of our point of sale. That does get them into digital experiences where they can see the color change on the videos and things of that. But it's going to take time for the masses to understand that that's what this does, that education challenge. But like that's not a reason not to do it. You know what I mean? Like,
No, of
yes, that
course.
is the challenge. That is exactly what I'm asking investors to invest in, is we're going to be the one who gets that education job done. And this is the IP that's going to get it done, because the category needs the education. The tea flower needs the education. Most people still don't even know this even exists in gin, let alone over now in vodka, tequila, etc. And so the belief is that just that is the path, and that when that snowball does start to go down the hill on its own and people do know what this is, then you'll have created something special that can also have a long life, versus something that maybe comes on the scene quick but leaves just as quick.
100%. And it's not a unique challenge to you, albeit it's
No.
it's the way you use the liquid and its attributes are unique to you, but in the sense of having to educate people is not unique. I mean, we see a lot of our clients talking about, sustainability is driving a lot of interest around Europe and the UK particularly. And it's about, well, you put all this effort into sustainability, but you're not able to educate anyone. So it doesn't really matter, because they're still going to just put it into landfill. So all these things, all these efforts that you're making have to kind of translate into a way. And it's always an ongoing challenge. I think it's really interesting, though, because you work so closely with different bartenders. They're almost your segment of customer, because they're your ambassadors. They talk the talk. They're your spokesperson in front of your final consumer.
Yeah, and I think the real value to the category is, yes, to the drinker. Of course, they get clear value from it. But the bartender with the gin and tonic was able to take, a $9 gin and tonic and get it elevated to a cocktail menu price point, $15, with the addition of the butterfly pea flower. That's it. That was it. It took a regular well gin and tonic, and you now made it a cocktail gin and tonic, because the gin you used already had this tea flower infused in it, and the customer wants that visual experience. Well, the opportunity to the bartender now is to have that jump into vodka sodas, tequila sodas, margaritas, martinis, and mules, because for the same amount of time and cost, they're able to deliver more revenue per transaction, more margin per transaction, and ultimately more tips for themselves. So they're interested in this category from a selfish greed perspective as much as the consumer is into it from a visually greed perspective. Like, I want the visual, give me the visual, right? So I think that's okay that everybody's, those are win-win situations. That's what's so cool about why this category, I think, deserves a place in the broader landscape, because there'll always be a drinker who's aesthetically driven, who cares about the visual first. This meets their needs better than anything else that's out there today. And then there are clear financial incentives for the supply chain to expand itself to accommodate another category, because that takes time and effort, education, as we talked about, and all of that effort. But I think the snowball is already going down the mountain on the category. Butterfly pea flower is coming. It's already popping. Now it's just who's going to help lead that education effort and be the kind of recognized champion for it. And we're hoping that Unicorn could be that, because we're trying to
100%.
really identify that brand as a butterfly pea brand and not a gin brand or a vodka brand or a tequila brand. We're going to keep this thing going with maybe, non-alcohol or, things like that, and just really keep the Unicorn thing on the tea flower.
Yeah. And there's a lot of opportunity for collaborations. There's a lot of opportunity for, I can see, in the mixology world, competitions are key. So, there's a little avenue for there is how do bartenders really use this to really step up their game? So, mixologists out there, you heard it here first.
Well, and on that note, it starts with the spirit competitions, and so San Francisco World Spirit Competition.
That's right. It's coming out.
Ones, they've added a category for color changing spirits, just for the visual change that we're bringing being considered as much as the flavor that we're bringing. If you want your spirit judged, on its color changing, like all of it. So anyway, I thought that was a cool addition. And that's how it starts, because if the spirit competitions all have a category, then you're likely going to see the grocery stores, the Total Wines, the BevMos start to acknowledge the category, and it proliferates then into bars, and the consumers, general education awareness grows. So that then
builds
bartender
that credibility.
happen, and of course all of that. It's fun. It's cool. It's a new
It's kind
thing.
of like you've thought this all through, Rick.
That's a lot of time on it. Like I said, I had a whole pandemic. I had a lot of time, and not a lot of people to talk
to. Well, you talked earlier about, that's what we're trying to encourage investors. You're clearly trying to work with scale. I think it sounds like you're growing. It sounds like you are ambitious and want to be growing and need that investment. Are there more spirits coming our way?
Not in 24.
Okay.
But yes, absolutely. The daiquiri and the mojito are right on the top of the list for the next round. But we'd like to see vodka and tequila open up a lot of doors for us first and get established pipelines and distributions, worked out with those products before we layer on the next. But I think between the gin, the vodka, the tequila, we've covered a lot of the cocktails that people are going to be going for. Rum and whiskey are obviously pretty big holes. Brandy leaves a lot of fun for LTOs because we could do all kinds of, almond and peach, limited expressions, because they can do this to any unaged spirit, right? So start doing moonshines and stuff. So there's a lot of fun we could do on like limited basis for creativity, a cherry one or something like that. So yeah, those would be fun to do.
Yeah, and that experimentation and that mentality is also something that I think limited editions lend itself so nicely to testing the market. Like it could be a limited edition, but if there's that demand, then there's no reason why that can't just be scaled out as just a new expression to roll it out. And I think that's why this world is just so incredible, because it just lends itself to that entrepreneurial thinking. So your distribution, from my research, and I'm probably out of date, you're out in Washington, Idaho, California, Arizona, carrying further into the South. What's the ultimate ambition, Rick?
Worldwide domination, of course.
I love that answer.
Yeah, no, we're trying to build a global category here. We do think this will be a thing in spirits for a long time. And that absolutely are going to try to champion this, throughout the Western world for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, this is a bit of a random question, but if money wasn't a factor, so let's just put that to a side. I know you're a numbers guy, but if that wasn't a factor, what would you do next with Unicorn?
Beverage innovation is what I do. Absolutely. When we get the snowball going down the mountain on this, and that will be, significant period of time, down the mountain, in front of me here. I could probably spend 10 years on this and still be opening up new markets, and places that have never had color changing spirits before. And the FDA approval is actually the gateway to that, because hundreds of countries rely upon the US FDA as their proxy. Big countries, things like, Mexico and South Korea, use US FDA guidance before they'll allow it into their countries. So the fact that it just got approved, a couple of years ago here means we are the first brand to be approved in Costa Rica. We are the first brands being approved in these other places, because they too couldn't, even though the other brands existed, they just weren't allowed to bring it in yet. So there's a lot to this, and to be part of creating a new category and not just another brand within an existing one. When I find that next opportunity, I'll work on it, but I'm not as interested in trying to become another rye whiskey maker, for example, even though I love rye whiskey. It's just not something I'm going to go spend my time to pursue. I want to go be, what I've learned is don't chase the trends as they're peaking, right? You got to go find the new white space, try to get that to take off. And then you can own the white space as it peaks up a little bit. And then, once a bunch of competition gets in, the trend stops, and sure, but you got to get the whole ride, Totally. So I'll keep looking for those opportunities and seeing, how it's changed every year. Right. So,
and of course, that's how it's led here is, if anyone's done the math, you will have had to take the risk and the trust that FDA approval would have come through, because you've done a lot of work in those 2 years. And that could have quite easily been another 5-6 years, but you must have had a pretty good sussing that was going to turn around. And so that, confidence.
It was I don't maybe bravado or ego, but I was very confident that when I saw that petition get filed, because I read up on that company that did it, and they're a big company. They're not weak with lawyers. They probably got a floor of them. So if they're going to go after the FDA, they know what they're doing. They're a food company. Like, this isn't people who don't know, like me. I'm not going to go get the FDA approving this. Like, had they not got this approved, the West doesn't open this up. But their desire to sell it as a natural food coloring to other parts of the industry gave them the financial incentive to go push that forward, and that's really what opened up the floodgates to all of us. Now there's a ton of distilleries playing around with this, and it's all because of them.
That's absolutely mental, but I'm loving it. This is I'm glad that we managed to book in this conversation. It's not at the start. You're 2.5 years into your journey, still an emerging spirit, of course, but I feel like there are big things happening here, and we're going to have to recalibrate in a couple of years just to see exactly how things have gone for you, because I expect world domination won't be far off in 2 years' time. On that note, if you were to describe Unicorn Spirits, Unicorn Distillery in a word or a phrase, what would it be?
We say UBU a lot.
Okay.
UBU.
As in UBU, as in UBU. Not UBU.
Yeah, okay. UBU, you be unique, you stand out from the crowd.
Own it.
So own it. UBU, chase your passions.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Rick, thank you so much for joining us and talking us through, just giving a snippet into the life of Rick and Alaina Hewitt at Unicorn Distillery. When I came across your article just a few weeks ago, I was just intrigued is probably the right word. I had to have you as a guest. I had to have you as someone who could share their story, because you've done some brilliant things in a very short space of time. And I know we can put it down to COVID, but I also think that that's a brilliant partnership of minds that's bringing something really, truly innovative and disruptive to an industry, and will continue to disrupt. And I guess that's part of your MO, isn't it? To continually encourage people to disrupt the status quo and create new things. So thank you for your time, and thank you for encouraging that. I will take that with me into the next interview for sure.
Thanks for having us. Absolutely.